What happened to Judas when he betrayed Jesus? Do you know? Well, today we will unravel the mystery surrounding Judas's life after betraying Jesus and how they first crossed paths. You'll also know the kind of job he was doing before he was called to be a disciple, which is linked to the reason why he was able to betray Jesus easily. You will understand why the Bible is silent about that, and a lot more about Judas today. So stay with us till the end, and we believe by the time we conclude his story, you'll be overwhelmed. This is something they don't tell you in church. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and like the video to stay in the loop. And to our awesome subscribers, big thanks for having our backs. Now, let's get into it. Judas Iscariot, often viewed as the epitome of betrayal, carries a reputation shrouded in mystery and misunderstanding. His name is forever linked to the image of the disciple who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, an amount equivalent to around $97 to $500 when we convert it into today's currency. But why Judas? To understand, let's transport ourselves back to the days around AD 40 to 50 in ancient Judea. During this time, there was a group known as the Sicari, or dagger men, who opposed Roman occupation and engaged in acts of terrorism. The name Iscariot associated Judas with this group. Hence, when the Bible mentions another Judas, it is often followed by the phrase, "but not Iscariot." Let me give you a little breakdown about this people, and you will understand why Judas was able to play his part in Jesus' crucifixion very successfully. The Sicari, a splinter group of the Jewish zealots, strongly opposed the Roman occupation of Judea in the decades preceding Jerusalem's destruction. They attempted to expel Romans and their sympathizers from the area. The Sicari carried small daggers called sici, concealed in their cloaks. At public gatherings, they would use these daggers to attack Romans and alleged sympathizers, blending into the crowd afterwards to escape detection. Regarded as one of the earliest organized assassination units using cloaks and daggers, the Sicari predated the order of assassins and Japanese ninjas by centuries. The Spanish term sicario, used in contemporary Latin America to describe a hitman, is derived from their name. Victims of the Sicari are believed to have included the high priest Jonathan, although his murder might have been orchestrated by the Roman governor Antonius Felix. Some murders prompted severe retaliation by the Romans against the broader Jewish population. However, there were instances where the Sicari released their intended victim if their terms were met. Much of the knowledge about the Sicari comes from the works of Josephus, including the Antiquities of the Jews and the Jewish War. The name Iscariot associated Judas with this group. It is believed that it was the time their group was disorganized, and he tried to find his way out. Then he met Jesus. Judas encountered Jesus when Jesus began his ministry after overcoming temptation by the devil and returning from his trial. Among the many followers, Judas stood out. He paid close attention to people and events surrounding Jesus, firmly believing that Jesus was the Messiah, the chosen one. However, Judas became disillusioned when he realized that Jesus' teachings emphasized heavenly matters, and Jesus was not ready to lead a rebellion against Roman rule. Judas had hoped for a more earthly salvation, and as Jesus' path diverged from his expectations, the seeds of betrayal were sown. He started distancing himself from Jesus now and then. When they looked for him, he was nowhere to be found. Even when he returned, he struggled to give a proper account of the money he handled as Jesus' treasurer. One incident at Lazarus, Martha, and Mary's home in Bethany stands out. Mary used expensive perfume to anoint Jesus' feet, a touching act that moved Jesus. Surprisingly, it was Judas who suggested selling the perfume and giving the money to the poor. At first, it might seem like Judas is a good steward, frugal and thoughtful, deserving of applause. However, John reveals that Judas said this not out of concern for the poor, but because he was a thief, stealing from the money box. John 12:6. Jesus, knowing Judas from the beginning to the end, labeled him the son of perdition or destruction. John 17:12. Despite this, Judas continued his actions. Jesus used parables and figures of speech to warn him about his deceitful activities. In Matthew 26:24, Jesus said, "Woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Jesus' poignant declaration was his trying to use a figure of speech called hyperbole to explain how serious the impending consequences of Judas' betrayal would be. Yet, Judas was not bothered. He was busy in negotiations with chief priest Caiaphas to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. We have a video on that topic. You can check it out to learn about the tragic fate that awaited Caiaphas after plotting against Jesus. Then comes the question, why did he settle for 30 pieces of silver? In Hebrew culture, this amount wasn't significant at the time. Even today, it isn't if you convert it to US dollars. It's only like $97. It was equal to the compensation amount paid to a slave owner if an ox gored his slave. This is captured in the Mosaic Law, Exodus 21:32. Selling Jesus for 30 pieces of silver is like equating him or treating him as a slave, revealing how little value Judas placed on the Messiah, ultimately betraying him. Judas revealed Jesus' location to the chief priests and elders in exchange for 30 pieces of silver. They supplied him with an armed guard, whom he brought to the Garden of Gethsemane near Jerusalem. This garden was where Jesus went to pray after the Last Supper, accompanied by the other 11 apostles. In that solemn place, Judas identified Jesus with a kiss, addressing him as Master. According to Matthew 26:14-16 and John 12:6, Judas's motive was greed, driven by a desire for money. However, Luke 22:3-6 attributes his actions to the entrance of Satan into his body, a concept also found in John 13:27, where it is mentioned that Satan entered into him after Judas took the bread at the Last Supper. In response to these events, Jesus says, "What you are going to do quickly." This moment is the culmination of John 6:70-71, where Jesus previously stated, "Did I not choose you the 12, and one of you is a devil?" The passage then reveals that he was referring to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, for he, one of the 12, was to betray him. They took Jesus, tried him on the same day, and prosecuted him the next day. If a man could betray others like this, what do you think will happen to him? Well, the Bible provides two different aftermaths for this traitor. In the Gospel of Matthew, after betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, Judas reportedly regretted his actions and tried to return the money to the chief priests and elders. When they refused to take it back, he threw the silver into the temple, went out, and hanged himself. The chief priests, unable to put the money into the temple treasury because it was considered blood money, used it to buy a field known as the Field of Blood. In the Gospel of Acts, a different account is given. According to Acts 1:18-19, Judas used the money he received for betraying Jesus to buy a field, and he met a gruesome end there. With the payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong, his body burst open, and all his intestines spilt out. These accounts may seem contradictory, but they are different perspectives from different authors in the Bible. The common elements include Judas's betrayal, remorse, and an unfortunate end. The stories highlight the consequences of his actions and the concept of divine retribution. Different Christian denominations may interpret these passages in various ways. But here is another side of the story. It was found in the Gospel of Judas. The Gospel of Judas, an apocryphal Christian scripture, dating back to the 2nd century AD, is attributed to the apostle Judas Iscariot. This unique gospel presents a Gnostic worldview depicting Judas in a positive light as the only apostle who fully comprehends Jesus' teachings. Though lost for centuries, references to the Gospel of Judas were made by St. Irenaeus of Lyon in AD 180, who dismissed it as fiction. However, a Coptic translation of the original Greek text was discovered in Egypt in the 1970s, hidden within a codex. The codex, acquired by an Egyptian antiquities dealer in 1978, was later purchased by the Mecenas Foundation for Ancient Art in 2000. The Gospel's text and translation were revealed to the public in 2006. Alongside the Gospel of Judas, the Codex includes the non-canonical First Apocalypse of James, a letter of the Apostle Peter, and a fragmentary work tentatively identified as the Book of Alleghines, or Book of the Stranger, a Gnostic text also found in the Najish Hammadi Codices in 1945. The Gospel of Judas is believed to have been compiled by a follower of a Gnostic sect, emphasizing the redemptive power of esoteric knowledge. Gnostics taught that the material world is created by an inferior deity, separate from the transcendent God. This gospel provides a distinct portrayal of Judas, traditionally condemned for betraying Jesus. Instead, it depicts Judas as Jesus' favored disciple, privy to secret knowledge withheld from the other apostles. This revelation encompasses insights into the nature of the cosmos, the transcendent God, the creation of angels and celestial beings, and the creation of humanity. The Gospel recounts conversations between Jesus and Judas that occurred during a week, 3 days, before he celebrated Passover. Judas emerges as Jesus' close confidant, with Jesus telling him, "You will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me." In this context, Jesus appears to ask Judas for assistance in liberating his spiritual self from his material body. Thus, the Judas portrayed in this gospel is not the betrayer of Jesus, but his most important apostle of all time. Now, do you still consider him a traitor, or do you believe he was used? Feel free to share your opinions by commenting below this video. Give a thumbs up if you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.